This is where the drum roll starts. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Barbara Post from Children's Hospital and Medical Center. We're here today with an esteemed panel of individuals to talk about collaborative IPD lessons from Children's Hospital and Medical Center of Omaha. And to that end, we have 4 individuals speaking today. We have Mike Doyle. He's a senior vice president with HDR, and he holds a Bachelor of Science in Architecture from the University of Nebraska. His experience includes all kinds of aspects of planning and design with an emphasis on hospitals and ambulatory care facilities, specialty centers of excellence. He currently is leading some strategic programs and activities related to some large main project delivery. In addition to Mike, we also have Alvin Coates, who is president of facilities and construction at Children's Hospital and Medical Center here, and he holds a Bachelor of Science and an MBA degree from the University of Nebraska. He has over 20 years of facilities management and construction experience in healthcare. And prior to his work here at Children's, he was a national employee for Catholic Health Initiative and worked locally for Creighton University Medical Center. Alvin has a strong history, and I can attest to this because I work with him, history of team leadership across a wide variety of large construction projects. And then we have Matt Steiner, who's a senior project manager for CBRE. He's our healthcare project lead in the Omaha market, and he holds a Bachelor of Science degree in construction management and has over 10 years in healthcare construction industry, both as a general contractor and as an owner's representative. And last, but certainly not least, is Al Broden, who is a construction manager for Kiewit Construction, and he's here at the Hubbard Center for Children. This project, he has a Bachelor of Science in Construction Engineering Technology and has been with Kiewit for 30 years. Al has an extensive healthcare resume and has been involved with X here at Children's, as well as many other places. So without further ado, we'll be getting started. Our project today talks about Hubbard Center for Children, which has 427,000 square feet addition, and then there's 42,000 square feet of renovation. And the tower costs are actually $410 million. It's a very strong and constantly watched budget. In addition, there's an east parking garage that's completed, and that has 762 stalls, and the garage costs $28 million. Mike, would you like to take it from here?
Thank you, Barbara. So we'd like to share some lessons with you today on what we learned from a project. We call it it's a mega project. It's over $200 million in construction value. And starting off with why IPD. And as Children's was going through a master plan update, and a very large project started to formulate, they started going on tours, which is very common. And one of the first places they visited was Akron Children's back in 2013. And as one of the executives at Children's puts it, they spent more time talking about how they delivered the project versus the actual project itself. And that's sort of where this IPD, or integrated project delivery concept, came to fruition. And what I like to tell people is that when you're going to do IPD for the first time, it really needs to come from the top down. It needs to be seen as a value proposition by leadership. As we began to go into the project and get into programming and design, there were additional site visits, and those were more tactical at that point about what do you look for, how do you put together teams, what are some of the success stories. And again, as I tell people, there's never a bad time for site visits because you're at different times of the journey. What we continue to hear and what we heard early on is that this is a great model for challenging projects. We heard that use multi-party agreements. The concept is to put all of the profit at risk, put it in the risk-reward pool, incentivize your team to innovate, set your targets early, manage risks as a team, and measure key performance indicators regularly. So we were off and running. We selected a two-part contract. We selected it was the second generation CD300. It starts with a preliminary IPD agreement, transitions into a full IPD agreement as you come out of validation. We transitioned everything to cost reimbursement. We established our overhead and profit for all of our primary team members. We created a milestone pull plan. We developed benchmark costs to help lead our discussion on what the target would be. We interviewed trade partners through sort of a industry day process, and then we moved into a co-location together. The key, I think, was making sure that we had one integrated team that was all going in true north. And that's what happened. We, in addition to Children's and Kiewit and HDR and CBRE, we had 5 trade partners, which is pretty common for a new build, a minimum of 5. We had our structural team, our envelope, our mechanical, electrical, and framing partner. So now we had a team in place. We had a 7-year project timeline with an opportunity to do IPD for the tower. We selected design build for the garage because we felt that was a fairly low risk aspect of the project. Nonetheless, it was very connected. So the Kiewit HDR team, along with our trade partners, used a different model for that, and we were off to the races. And Alvin's going to tell you a little bit more about KPIs and how that played into our performance.
Thanks, Mike. So from an owner standpoint, I just want to talk a little bit about the IPD process and what it meant to us. Once the project was approved and we started rolling forward, we knew we had to build quickly. Our city has grown quite rapidly. Our organization had grown quite rapidly to the point where we had some real issues. You know, we're leasing space in an adjacent hospital, in a competing hospital for our NICU. They cross the street in a sky bridge. It is not ideal. We were busing employees parking about a mile away in a shopping center. So we had experienced a great deal of growth in a very rapid time. So we knew we had to get this thing going. The KPIs we built obviously reflect that. As you can see, ranked in order of incentive, our schedule was the most important thing. We had to get going. Our hospital is full every day, and we had to make that the number one priority. We also obviously have a KPI around budget, and we have a KPI around quality. But again, that schedule couldn't be any more important. So once the KPI was established, we've been able to review those KPIs as Mike mentioned, we review those KPIs on a regular basis, so that it's clear, it's very transparent. Every quarter we review those, and we keep those front and center in the project. I can't say enough about the IPD process on the construction side. Al's going to talk more details about this, but this is a super tough project. And I know Barb said I have a strong history. That's a nice way of saying I'm old. But none of the projects I've been around have been as tough as this one. As you can see that bottom diagram, we're surrounded by, that's major street. That's the busiest street in Omaha. I know it doesn't mean a lot to some of you, but that is our busiest street right there. We had to work around that. On the other side, we're surrounded by operating hospitals. We're a functioning hospital this whole time. So it was a super tough project. There's a lot of intangibles that were out there that we worked through. We had a brutal winter. We've had a pandemic, and we've been able to maintain schedule and keep going on our project as well as it's scheduled. The safety record is impeccable. You can see those 3 little squares I put on there at slide, the 3 tower cranes, and that was enough. That's enough to coordinate, let alone everything else. So super tough project. The IPD process played into that with everybody in the big room process. Matt's going to talk a little bit more about that and how we collaborate and really kept our change orders to a minimum as we work through the process. So I'm gonna turn it over to Matt, and he'll talk some more about that.
All right, thank you, Alvin. So as we all know, whenever we have a project, it always stays the same, right? There's never any changes. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. There's always changes. It's inevitable. I like to think of our team sitting up at the plate, and we're getting really good at hitting change ups. We've had a lot of changes through the course of the project, and I want to touch on how IPD has helped us through that. Schedules was the most important thing for us. So how do we work through changes and still maintain a date that the hospital needs us to hit? We've had a lot of different things happen. The first thing I want to touch on is leadership changes. When we started the project, I came on board in 2015, at the end of 2015, and Children's had hired a new CEO. And he had a much larger vision for this project than the original thought. So when I came on board, it was a $200 million project. New CEO came on and said, hey guys, you guys aren't thinking big enough. We need to think bigger. We want this to be a regional destination, even nationwide. We want to serve kids wherever they are and get them here and provide excellent care for them. Of course, the project grew. We went back to the drawing board in the programming phase. We started thinking too big. At one point, you say, you're not thinking big enough. And then you get to a point where you say, whoa, back off a second. But that was our first big challenge. Then in 2019, he retired. And so we had a new interim CEO. And he came in and he said, well, is there any way we can cut some costs? And by that point, we were well within construction. We did manage to find some areas where we could shell some rooms and save some costs for the hospital. And then he was replaced last year in September with the new CEO. And her message to our team has been, let's get this done, guys. So that's where we are now. We've had, through all these leadership changes, our team has done an excellent job coming up with ways to match that vision of those leaders. And the reason we can do that is because we're all located here together. We've got a big room of hundreds of individuals. We have all of our team partners here. So whenever we have something come up that we need to hop on, we attack it right away. And we did the same thing with these leadership changes. The next thing that happened, and I'll go into a lot more detail here on one particular event, but our program over time changed anywhere from 200 million to 425 million. So we had lots of iterations in between there. I'll touch on an event in 2017 that kind of set the stage for the rest of the project here in a minute. But eventually we ended up on our $385 million project. The last big change item that we've come across has been in-project scope changes. In 2018, we processed 36 changes. In 2019, there was 28 changes. 2020, we had 24 changes, and we have 6 pending as of this year. That's a total of 94 change orders on our project. I went through our list, and what was amazing to me, in any project, you're going to have changes, you're going to get change orders. But out of all of those changes, only 2 of them were from our contractor. The rest were owner-initiated things that they wanted to add to the building or change to the building. And that, to me, was an amazing statistic. I don't think we could have done that in any other delivery model. Whenever we came across an issue, whether it be a design issue or something not shown correctly on the drawings or maybe a field issue, our team gets together, we attack the problem. Every week we're meeting and going through those things, and what the result is not a change order to the hospital. That's a huge advantage for the owner, and one of the benefits of IPD in the model that we're using here. So now to dive a little bit deeper into the next slide. In 2017, this is probably our biggest change. 2017, the hospital's reimbursements changed. Their operating margin projections that they had planned to use to fund portions of the project were not what they thought they would be. So they said, hey guys, we need to take a pause. And we said, okay, what does that mean exactly? So we spent a lot of time going through that as a team. We spent the summer of 2017 cutting $50 million out of the project, which is an incredible feat. We took out, we eliminated a few levels. We have a basement level here. That's the lower level 5 that was completely removed from the project. We shifted around our MEP design to different levels so they matched up with the existing hospital. We have a central utility plant that we moved into a different location than originally planned. We moved our radiology department into the new building before it had been split between renovation and new. And we shelled the 4th floor. We did all this to cut costs, of course, and get where we needed to be. We were successful in that. We spent the summer estimating. We would kick out estimates almost weekly, and the reason we were able to do that again was because we were all in the same location. We were together. We were working through problems and issues and ideas, and I just don't know if we could have done that in a different model. So it was a huge success. It got us going down a certain path, and then as we got into construction, we were fortunate enough to be able to add back in some program, which we've done, and brings us to our $410 million project today. And the most amazing part through all of this is we had a hard date in 2021 to get out of a lease, and we never changed that date until we added in another shelled floor. And Al and his team have done an amazing job. The design team collaborating with our contractors, our trade partners, looking to the design team to help inform them and say, hey, no, we need to do something this way. And the flexibility of the team together here has been a true benefit from the IPD process. I'm going to kick it over to Al. He's going to give us a little more detail on the construction side, but that's how we've managed the change thus far.
Thanks, Matt. So as you've heard, this is a very complicated project without any of the other challenges that we've experienced. We're connected to an existing building on the south, connected to an existing building on the west. The street that Alvin mentioned is a state highway that is 3 lanes of traffic in both directions. We're confined by the existing loading dock and the parking garage that we were building on the east. And at one point, we had 3 tower cranes on all the same site. So a lot of challenges, regardless of some of the outside factors that we experience. From the worst winter in 15 years during the time we were setting structural steel, just the site logistics alone, and then the importance of the schedule and COVID. But The IPD process allowed us to collaborate in a much different way than we do on most projects. Construction is a very collaborative business anyway, but with the IPD process, our team has been able to really come together and focus on the importance of getting this job done and everybody working together in the best interest of the project rather than the best interest of our individual companies. And some of the things that have led to that is the importance of co-location and leading to more efficient and quicker problem solving, which in the end has allowed us to protect our schedule. So one of the first things we did was co-locate our team. We made selections of our trade partners the week before and during Thanksgiving. And on December 6th, we had approximately 125 people from HDR, Kiewit, CBRE, the hospital, and all 5 of our trade partners sitting in one room ready to go to work. And that's the way we've organized our co-location space from day one and through today. We've had to move once into a different space, but as you can see in the picture on this screen on the right, we maybe took co-location to a little bit of an extreme. There are only 3 private offices in a 12,000 square foot facility that we had to build in the lowest level of an existing parking garage because there was no room on site for any sort of construction office. The footprint of our building fills up the entire site from the existing buildings on the south and west to the property line on the north. And each individual has an 8-foot table. And from the very beginning, we organized ourselves so that the mechanical contractor sat with the mechanical designer, the electrical contractor sat with the electrical designer, and structural contractors with structural designers. And the big deal about that is it allowed us to look over each other's shoulder and do some real-time estimating, do a lot of construction coordination and constructability studies as the design was going on, which eliminated a lot of potential problems in the field. So we continue to maintain that. And the other thing about the co-location that's been so effective is we've been able to come together as a team and do, like I said, what's right for the project rather than watching out for our individual companies. And one of the biggest things that we've learned when we started this process, it was the first time anybody on our team has done an IPD project. And in the first few months of the job, I used to always say, we have to think different. We're just not sure what that means yet. And we've come to learn what it is. You can go to the next slide, please, Barbara. Well, one of the things that we did different, we started the project with a P6 schedule like we are all used to using. And as we did some training in the IPD methods and looking for better ways to do things, we got introduced to pull planning. And we started doing a lot of pull planning in the room with all of our foreman, superintendent, and all the experts from our various companies. And you're probably familiar with the sticky notes on the wall. That helped us fine tune our P6 schedule. But as we got more and more into it and started to take advantage of the pull planning method, we were introduced to the vPlanner software, which is the electronic version of pull planning. And what that did for us, unfortunately, we were about 1.5 years into the job when we switched from P6 to vPlanner. So we had a really steep learning curve, but what that has done for us is every obstacle that has come up, we've been able to bring the team in a minute's notice because we're all sitting right here in the same room together and start figuring out how we can resequence, replan things, stack activities, or reorganize our schedule to overcome them. And as you've heard, our first big obstacle as far as schedule was we were able to figure out a way to start steel erection approximately 6 weeks early. And then we went into the worst winter, 2018 and 2019, that Omaha's had in over 15 years. We had 55 inches of snow. We had weeks on end of below zero temperatures, but our steel crew, erectors, were able to continue setting steel on days when they could, and when days when they couldn't set steel, we were removing snow and clearing ice so that they could go back to work as soon as possible. Overall, that winter cost us about a 6 to 7 week delay, and we ended up finishing steel erection still 2 weeks earlier than our original plan. One of the next lessons that we learned was prefabrication. And when we started talking about prefabrication, we were all trying to hit a home run with prefabricating. The biggest thing we could figure out how to save time and man hours in the field. And the more we dug into it, what we started to figure out and what was most effective for us was with little things like setting up kits to install sinks in a room, or prefabricating an electrical junction box with the conduit stubbed up through the ceiling that could be put in the wall. And as we did those little things, we started to get ideas of, hey, if we can do this, we can add this. And we ended up, some of the bigger successes that we had as far as prefabrication was going to a prefabricated head wall. And we looked at several different options of our mechanical and electrical trades, building them in their shop and bringing them out. And we ended up going to a manufactured head wall system. But that allowed us to reduce the number of connections to the head wall in the field, reduced man hours to build the head wall, and end up with a much higher quality product. Some of the other things that we looked at were prefabricated OR ceilings, our pipe racks for mechanical and electrical rough-ins in the ceiling. Started out with our mechanical contractor building pipe racks for our supply and waste lines and chiller lines, things like that. And as they started getting delivered to the job, and we were all standing looking at them and watching them get installed, we said, why can't we hang our conduits in those too? So we worked out a system where our mechanical contractor would build their pipe rack, and then our electrician would go to their shop and add conduits to it. And we started installing 20-foot sections of pipe racks in our corridors, which eliminated the number of joints in the ceiling, the joints in the field and things like that. So it became a much more efficient way of installing our overhead rough-ins, and helped reduce time in the field. And then COVID came along, and as COVID started to heat up here in March of 20, one of the first things that we recognized is everything that we had been doing for the last 2 years with our co-location space and the way we were collaborating with each other is completely opposite than COVID precautions. So we've got 150 people at that time in our office, sitting side by side. And because of COVID restrictions, we had to start social distancing, which led us to doing a lot of remote work. A lot of our engineers and project managers working off-site. All of our in-person meetings that a lot of time would involve anywhere from a handful of people to 40 or 50 people at a time. We had to figure out ways of taking those to a virtual session, whether it be in Teams or Zoom. And then we had to overcome all the technology challenges of having that many people on a team call or Zoom call and not dropping or getting the background noise and things like that. So in a matter of months, we completely regrouped, and our big room day that we typically do on Tuesday mornings or throughout the day on Tuesday would involve our entire team of craft superintendents, our project managers, the schedulers, estimators, and there would be 40 or 50 people in one room at a time. And within a matter of about 2 weeks, we started doing those meetings through first a WebEx, and we experienced a lot of technology challenges with that. So we moved to Zoom, and we still had some issues, and we currently are doing our meetings with Teams. And in order to get everyone to participate, we sometimes have people walking around with an iPad with the camera going, so whoever might be in the room talking, we can move the iPad over, get in front of them so that everybody else that's out on the call can see them. And we continue to do our collaboration the way we have. It's just in a different format. So to wrap it up, I mean, the biggest success that we've seen with the IPD process and our team is being willing to think different, being willing to challenge ourselves, and at the end of the day, always doing everything that's in the best interest of the project, rather than our own best interest. And I'll turn it back to Barb.
Barb, you're on mute.
Al, the first question looks like it's for you, from our friend and colleague, Joe Bergman. Did you continue to use vPlanner and P6, or vPlanner for everything?
We did continue to use P6, mainly because we have some company requirements to maintain a P6 schedule on every project we do. But it became more of a high-level milestone type schedule rather than a typical detailed P6 schedule that you would normally see on a project if that was your only tool. But as far as the project is concerned, we went strictly to vPlanner and kind of pushed P6 to the side.
It looks like Barb is still experiencing audio problems. Any other questions out there? I know as I reflect back on this project, which, we're in year 6 of a 7-year project, I think there are a lot of things to celebrate, but I think Al touched on the COVID issues that we experienced, and I don't think anybody could ever underestimate the amount of work that our builder and trade partners had to be confronted with to keep the project going.
Mike, I see another question. Any advice for new project teams that might be starting now with COVID virtual working for a group that did not have the benefit of getting to know each other prior to starting the project? That's a great question. And with or without COVID, getting the team to know each other and understand each other is even more critically important on an IPD project than it is with any other project. But I guess my suggestions, if you're starting now with COVID restrictions, first of all, if you have the opportunity to plan your office space, it needs to be larger than you would normally build it to allow for some social distancing. And start off with an appropriate virtual tool, whether it's Zoom or Teams or WebEx. Get all of your key players together and find out what system their companies use. That was one of the challenges we had. Is Kiewit uses Teams, CBRE uses Zoom, HDR is on Teams. We've got some other trade partners that use some other virtual tools, and it's not as simple as just sending out a Teams invite and everybody logs on. And so whether it's with the virtual meetings or any other software that you're going to share, take the time up front to understand what types of firewalls and what types of internet or cybersecurity each company might have, and pick a tool that'll work with everyone's system. And then as far as getting to know each other, even though it's virtually, and just like we're doing now, you can still have a conference where you can have people's screen up and see them. And one of the challenges that I think we fell into is not knowing the process in the beginning. We dove right into what we know, estimating, designing, figuring out how to build things. Looking back now, I've told our team, if we could go back to December of 16, when we started estimating and continuing the design, we should have pushed that off for at least a couple of weeks and spent that time with our team together, doing team building exercises where you get to know each other both on a professional and personal level, and understand who has the best experience in whatever you're talking about. Who's the best scheduling people, who's the best structural people, and utilize all of your team where their expertise is.
Still not getting audio. We have another question that just came in from Jennifer Mishkin. With all of the leadership changes, how was the previous direction documented and how was it then revised? I'm going to answer the first part and then I'm going to throw it to Matt. So I think the beauty of the IPD process is that it starts generally with a business case, and the business case is documented by key planning units, KPUs. So we had a owner's program that was documented, and then our whole target value, or EMP, estimated maximum price, was based on the owner's program requirements and a validation or a concept design. And I'll throw it to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, when we were going through our big program changes, we were fortunate enough to not be too far along where we could reprogram and redocument. I mean, we basically wrote the program twice. But as we were getting into big time cut, we used a lot of A3s. If you're familiar with that at all, that was a helpful tool for our team to make big decisions, and we documented those on the A3 form. And we had current working estimates where we were kicking out estimates every week or so. So that target line was moving, but we just had our normal budget updates, and we had this a very large path backlog is what we called it. It was just a big spreadsheet, really, that had all of our ideas on there that we were through. And that's how we kept track of things. And then, as I kind of mentioned, the end of our big change that established our initial 385 budget was our validation report. And so the team put together as a 100-page document, basically with all of the different clarifications on, what we thought we were pricing, and what wasn't, what had changed, what hadn't. And that's been one of the documents that we've referred to, many, many times as we go through the project. So a lot of different tools, nothing fancy. We were, like Al said, we were new to IPD, so we used a lot of the tools that we were used to using. But at the end of the day, we kept track of it all, just kind of with what we were used to and comfortable with. To Al's point a little bit about being on the same platform, that's helpful if you're using a particular program that maybe another company doesn't use. We use basically Microsoft products for most of it. So
I think, Matt, is it fair to say that even through the change management process, we've essentially been able to maintain our primary KPUs that we started with in 2016?
Yeah. The programming hasn't changed drastically. We've added little bits and pieces there, little details, but we've kept with what we originally set to do.
The next
There's a message coming
of mine, John Ross, and I think this is for you, Al. It sounds like we looked at modular prefabricated rooms. What kind of analysis did you go through for conclusion, cost, logistics, uncertainty?
Yeah, I'll take that one. As far as the prefabricated rooms, we took a really hard look at prefabricated bathroom pods. We did a pretty extensive analysis on cost, and we came up with that they would actually be a little bit more expensive than we can build in the field. The advantages that we saw to it, though, was in schedule. It would save significant time. And what drove us away from actually implementing that idea was access to the site. If you look at the picture on the screen, you're looking from the north, looking south. The West Dodge Road, which is the state highway on the north side of the building, and the final state will be 15 feet away from the building. So in order to create an access in and out of the job site, we had to take a center island out of that highway and shift all the traffic to the north. And then our one point of access in and out of the project for material deliveries is actually the southernmost lane of that highway. And it wasn't enough physical room either on the site or to be able to swing the prefabricated rooms into the building. And we finally determined that it would not be feasible to do those because we couldn't load them in the building.
All right, I guess basically wrap things up. Appreciate that everybody came out today and participated with us. If you have further questions, please feel free to forward them to the hosts and we'll get back to you. And look forward to meeting you out there on your journey. Take care, everybody.